Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that's fascinated by the fun and games and finances of the music world. As explained each week by me, Steve Lamack, and him, Stuart Dredge, after our listener questions episode last week. Some news to catch up on this week. Although just before we do, it turns out that both of us ended up going to see Oasis at Wembley in the past week. Not together, I should straight, not even on the same night. But Stuart, you got a ticket out of the blue and went last night. We're recording this, by the way, slightly earlier in the week than we usually do on a Monday. So last night, top line. What did you make of it?
I really enjoyed it. I was, before we talked about them, and I said, I saw them when they were rotten. A few, the later before they were, it was really good. They've obviously come back fired up to make it good, and So I really enjoyed it. How about you? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be churlish, wouldn't it, to in any way attempt to pull apart a night where nearly 90,000 people probably had their best time. So I tell you what was really interesting. They must have sold, I mean, thousands of pounds, millions of pounds worth of merchandise for this tour, though, haven't they, through their deal with Adidas? I mean, we were chatting about this, me and some mates, before going to see Colchester United's opening match of the season, because it's the sort of thing, once we've worked out who's in the team, it's the sort of thing we talk about in the beer garden before a game. But my mate Tom's mate Lee works for a high street fashion brand. I shan't say which one, but we were trying to work out what sort of deal Adidas have done with Oasis, because obviously, a lot of fashion brands, high street stores, they quite often approach artists to buy the license to use the group's logo or a specific shirt design. But this feels much more like it's been a team effort. It's much more of a collaboration, I think, because I had to look last night, and there are other brands who've produced Oasis clothing for the reunion gig. Levi's have got a whole range with the Oasis logo on, but what obviously they don't have is the tagline Live 25 or the endorsements of the Gallagher brothers in various photos, or the official merch stand at the gigs, which is obviously what Adidas have. But I wonder what that cost them. Whatever they paid, whatever the percentages are, it's a huge moment for Adidas. And the range of clothes they've designed obviously seem to have really struck a nerve with the crowd. Because honestly, what would you say? 50% of the audience were in official Adidas shirts, maybe more. I don't know. What was it like last night?
The other thing I noticed was, on the way to the gig, a lot of fans wearing the Live 25 merchandise. So, like when I was a kid and going to gigs, I would basically buy a T-shirt at the gig, and I'd probably stuff it down my pocket or put it on over whatever I was wearing.
You're running to the toilets to change. That was always
but now people buy merch often before the concerts to go to. It's a really. We should do something like it sometime if we can get them to talk, because they've got the Adidas thing. They've got Amazon Music are doing a bunch of nostalgic merch around big moments in the past, and they've got these pop-up shops. The merch around this is this really well organized, complementary, interlocking campaign. They must be making so much money, and you can tell
it's also perfect, though, isn't it? Because everyone who was an Oasis fan, all their old merch has either been thrown away, or it's tatty, or it doesn't fit anymore. So you've got everyone starting from scratch, and the people who've never seen them probably have one Oasis logoed T-shirt, but not anything on the scale or the style of this latest range. So, we might come back to the subject of Oasis in this week's lock-in. There's one or two other things probably to say about the gigs, but as I say, a bit of news to catch up on. We'll be touching on Hayley Williams and her album that isn't an album, the festival that attracted 74 million people. Take that, Glastonbury, and the biggest country tour of all time. But to start, here's Stuart's big number for this week. Give us a big figure, a massive stat from the past few days. What have you got?
All right, you're going to react badly to this initial stat, but I'll explain it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the number is 12.8%, which sounds rubbish. 12.8% of the entire world's population is the number.
What does that equate to then? What in a number?
That is 1 billion people.
1 billion is a better figure to start with. So 1 billion, 12.8% of the entire world's population. How does that tie into music?
Well, this is Spotify's target for the number of people it wants to be paying for Spotify
Is
eventually.
it? Is it?
1 billion. So they had this. Did their financial results last week, and they had this call with analysts. And the CEO said the goal is 1 billion subscribers, and they currently have like 276 million. So it's a
Right.
way off.
Yeah.
But then their chief business officer, a guy called Alex Nordstrom, he said that over 3% of the world's population subscribes to Spotify already. And I checked that out, and it's correct. It's a bit more than 3%.
Right.
And he said it's not implausible to imagine us reaching 10% or even 15% of the world's population. And 1 billion people is 12.8%. So it's in the middle of those. So there you have it. It's kind of like a big statement of intent. Like, we've grown this big, but we want to get 4 times bigger with our subscribers and rule the world, which obviously listeners will have varying views on.
Where does this mean then, targeting different territories? I mean, because the growth will be slower in markets like the UK and America, which have had Spotify for a while. Is this something to do with music culture or just the way they market themselves? Is it changes in local music scenes? How do they achieve this?
I think a lot of it is new parts of the world. So places like India, places like Africa, Latin America, there's a lot of growth expected there. And I think there's been these other reports that have come out in the industry that say, in just a couple of years' time, probably, most of the new music subscribers will come from, I think the phrase uses the global south, which basically means everywhere outside America and Europe.
Right.
So this is like a wider trend of like, this is where people see the growth coming. And yeah, but I think also it's Spotify saying we still want to get the people who are currently free listeners to upgrade to subscribers. We still want to get more people who aren't streaming already.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I think it's one of the things we often talk about is we always talk about Spotify stats because its rivals don't really give out numbers so much. Like Apple Music,
yeah, this is what I was going to ask. How does this contrast to the other streaming services? How far behind are Apple and Amazon and Deezer and the like?
Well, I mean, Apple and Amazon don't give numbers out very often, so
Right.
they're big, but they're more in the 100 million range.
Right.
YouTube does actually give figures. So in March, it's at 125 million premium subscribers. So that is big number, but Spotify is more than double that. So it is. So I think when it talks about these figures and it then looks ahead and goes 1 billion, it's also a way of cementing the fact that it's the biggest and making everyone realize that. So it's
Right.
it's like it's a statement. Did you remember there was one? Oh, it was The Social Network, that film about Facebook, when there was a moment in that when they were talking about what's bigger than 1 million users, 1 billion users, and it's that does seem to be a number that really exerts a fascination with people who run big tech companies. Get to 1 billion.
And was there anything else in these in Spotify's latest financial results? Does it carry any other information? And when they're laying out their position, do they give anything else away about what they're planning or what they believe they're doing right, or maybe even wrong? I don't know.
Yeah, well, wrong actually. So we're not wrong, but struggling. So one thing we learned was that Spotify is struggling with its advertising business. So that the money it makes from ads for people who are listening for free, those revenues actually went down by 1% year on year, which is very unusual. They've been growing and growing. And it talked about, so in this earnings call, it said, look, we're not happy with this. It's not growing as we wanted it to. It's not where we want it to be. And they said it's something, I think it was the phrase was something like, it's an execution thing, not a strategic thing. So they still believe they can do it, but they need to be better at selling ads and making more money from the ads they sell. So that's interesting because it ties in with, I don't know if you remember, labels have been grumbling in the last year about free streaming and ad-supported streaming and saying it's not doing well enough. It's not growing enough. And I think it was Sony Music have said a couple of times, maybe the people like Spotify should charge for their what's currently free. So instead of getting it for free, you might pay a small amount and have ads in it. And so I think Spotify says, no, we can do a better job of selling ads and we can return this growth. But if that takes longer than expected, you may see labels start to rumble again about, well, we're not happy with how this is growing. And a lot of people listen for free and you're not making enough money. But that's not a Spotify thing only, other people. But the other thing we learned, well, we didn't learn anything really, but analysts, so the analysts are the guys who kind of, talk to Wall Street about how Spotify is doing. And they were asking about its plans for a super fan, more expensive premium tier. So, and that's been talked about for a while. It's been leaked, details of what's in it. We've talked about those, haven't we? And they asked, and basically Spotify deflected that question and said, yeah, still coming, still very excited about it. but still no firm date. And as things happened, the very next day, Universal Music had its earnings call with analysts because it had its financial results. And they were asking Universal about this and saying, is there anything going on here? Because Spotify is saying it's not quite ready yet. Are you happy with this? Sort of, like those kind of questions that are probing for tensions.
Mm.
And Universal Music's bosses actually said, no, we agree. Better not to rush this, better to get it right. And we're on board with this taking the time it needs to. So that's the other thing going on, that Spotify is about to launch its thing that'll be more expensive, could bring more money in. But it's taking its time to get it right. And labels so far are happy with that.
Okay. 1 billion then, that's your big figure for this week. Here's our top 3 news stories, 2 of which actually, I think in a way hint at potential shifts in music culture in the future. Firstly, more than 74 million people watched dance festival Tomorrowland via its live streams on TikTok. I mean, that's another big figure. Tell us more about Tomorrowland and how they worked out this figure. How do they pull this audience?
Yeah, so it's a really fun, and it's a phoenix from the flame, from the flame story, because just before the festival this year, the main stage burnt down.
Oh no!
Tomorrowland, and they had to rebuild a completely new main stage the day before. Which, if you're TikTok and you've done this big deal to live stream it, you must be thinking, "Oh God, what's happening here? Is there going to be a festival?" But yeah, so Tomorrowland is a very well-established dance festival, and it's done live streams with TikTok before. So I think a couple of years ago, 16 million people watched live streams on TikTok, and that was at the time a big figure. I was like, "Wow, 16 million people watching a festival." But yeah, I mean, so it's a crazy audience, isn't it? If you think about it, I mean, the sets were live streamed on TikTok, and there was lots of promotion of it. And I think if you opened TikTok and you had any interest that TikTok knew about in electronic music, you probably would have been sort of shown this was happening. So it did a big hope. And we don't know how much of it they watched. You may have just tuned in for one set or a few minutes, but it just seems to be part of a really fascinating trend where these big festivals are saying, right, we can sell out, or we can broadly sell out, but there's this huge global audience we can reach. And so you have YouTube does the Coachella Festival, and they do live stream. That's been going for a while. Amazon Music does the Stagecoach Festival, which is a big thing in the US. Obviously, the BBC does Glastonbury here, which is well established. And tell me what you think about this. Like, I was thinking, I wonder what this means if you're a big festival and you know that you're going to have this huge audience watching on a vertically sort of aligned smartphone. Does that change the way you design the stages? Does it change who you book? Do you try and book more people who kind of get appeal to a TikTok audience? What does it mean for how those festivals are, that they know they have this huge online audience? I'm kind of fascinated by that.
Well, does TikTok does TikTok pay for the rights of being able to broadcast from the festival? Because what it will come down to is how much do we need the financial investment, and then how much are we prepared to compromise to the people who are going to be screening it? I think because I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be entirely dignified, I don't think, for major established festivals to then start, modifying their sites or their stages. I don't think, just to take the dollar. I think there'd be some kickback against that. But well, the other thing I'm thinking is, and I know when this first started, and it might have been around Coachella, but obviously there's a difficulty now in, if you are basically selling these broadcasting rights to a company, how does that affect the artist's contract? Because the artist has to give, well, that's the thing. If you can only play, I mean, it doesn't happen at Glastonbury, I don't think, but there are festivals around the world where you can only play if you basically sign up or sign away your rights, your TV rights. And so you don't want to lose, basically the rights to a live performance, because you might be wanting to do something with that yourself. I mean, in snippets on TikTok, it's possibly less of a problem. But, if whole live sets may, end up living online, then are you compensated for that in your fee from the festival? Do you see what I mean?
And I wonder if that's where live streams kind of can help you wiggle out of that. Because with TikTok, it was live stream, but I don't think they're archiving.
It's not.
There'll be clips only now.
Yeah.
But But it is interesting, like you say, I think, because I think there are still festival live streams where a big act won't be streamed live because they've said they don't want it to be.
Yeah.
Because Neil Young nearly did that from Glastonbury, didn't he? And then he relented, I think, and said, no, you can
Yeah.
stream it. But it is, I think it's the other thing I've been thinking about, and this is very much, I've got no evidence of this happening yet, but these are all the big festivals doing this, obviously, Tomorrowland, Glastonbury, Coachella, huge brands anyway. But I do wonder if there are people who are happy to watch festival sets on their phone if they can't go. Is there something here that could be done with the smaller events that have been struggling? Like, obviously, there's a trade-off there. They might worry about ticket sales, but I wonder if there are partnerships to be done between people like TikTok and YouTube and the smaller festivals that can help those festivals build their brands, reach people, and make some more money in a different way. Like, that would be quite positive, I think. I hope it's not just the biggest events that get streamed.
It'd be interesting if anyone listening is involved in a festival. Drop us a line and let us know what you think, whether this is a good trend or a bad trend. Story 2 this week, and now we've seen various artists adapting to how they make or release their music in the streaming era. This is another interesting one. Tells us a lot about the times we live in. Last week, Hayley Williams, Paramore's Hayley Williams, surprise released 17 new songs, but there's 2 notable things about this. One, the streaming services didn't get them first. The first people to hear these tracks, she made the tracks available to fans who had bought her branded hair dye. They got 24 hours of free listening to these tracks on her website ahead of the songs going on the streaming services. And secondly, the 17 tracks didn't come as one package, didn't come as an album. They were all released individually as 17 separate singles. Let's get the hair dye out of the way first. What were the terms? Do we know how much it cost?
No, actually, no.
Is the hair dye any good? Have you tested it?
I just bought it without looking at the price, sadly. So, no, well, actually, it's one of those things where you think this seems very apt. Like, she her image is famously she used hair dye, and I think this is one of those ways you go, okay, who are my super fans? Well, they're the ones who bought my own hair dye, so I kind of get that strategy.
Yeah.
And it's I guess this is 2025, isn't it? Like, artists have their own stuff. Like, in a way, Oasis didn't do any of this because I think Liam's fashion brand, has he still got it? Pretty
I'm
Green?
not sure.
Like,
I'm not sure he's involved with it anymore.
No, because they could have done a thing of like, buy the bucket hat, get into the ticket queue, which they mostly say. But yeah, I think it's interesting. The thing I was thinking is, I think I'm right, is Paramore have recently gone independent, haven't they? I think like last year.
They've left. Where were they? Atlantic Records,
I think it was.
And then the deal finished, so now they can do whatever they want. Yeah. I guess.
And I guess this is her, and she may. But when you're independent, you can do this. You can be like, you know what? I've got this new stuff. I don't have to do it on streaming first. And I think it's a little pushback against, for years, I think everyone's saying, right, streaming it's got to be on streaming. Why would you not have it on streaming from day one? And when you're independent, you can go, actually, if I do it here first, there's another benefit for me. And it can go on streaming a few days later.
I mean, this is freedom. This is exactly as you say. This is a super. This fits the model of the super fan in a way that it would be hard for Spotify or anyone else to harness in a way, and it shows you how much power the artist actually has in having direct communication with their fans. You don't need a middleman, do you, when you can do something like this, which is, because this is what fans are after, isn't it? Where everyone's saying, well, how do we get the super fans? Well, something like early access to some music is what the super fans actually want.
Yeah, and there's some research I've seen that says that they want to hear things first, and they want to be rewarded, for loving something. And I think the things complement each other, because I think if you're Hayley Williams, you still want to reach people who aren't your super fans, and that's where streaming kicks in. And everyone, that's what. So it's not even a case of one or the other. She's used them really smartly to go right first here, then there.
Yeah.
And I kind of like this idea of just songs being released basically in a folder on your website. Like, this seems to be a thing that's coming back a little bit. Like, I remember last August. So Drake did this thing last August where we just basically stuffed 100 gigabytes of music and videos into a folder on a website and then pinged the link out to fans.
Right.
and then left them to go through it all and find like there were 3 new tracks in there, but also a lot of video footage of him playing football and stuff. Like, but it's that thing, and I think there was who was it? Run the Jewels. I remember when they first were building their career, it was all free music on their website. Go and download it, but they got email addresses, and that was how they built their mailing list.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot you can do with this in a weird way. Like when you see the music industry figures about what's making money, downloads just been going down and down. No one's buying downloads anymore, really. But free downloads for super fans is a little trend that's coming back, and that's kind of fun too.
I like this idea though that all the songs they were all completely separate files, and then they all appeared completely separately on as different entries on the streaming services. So there's no it's an album's worth of songs, but there is no album. So but you can make your own album from the new tracks if you put them all together in a playlist. But then it's up to you which order you put the tracks in. You can track list your own Hayley Williams album, which I like. Build your own version of the album. I think I quite like that.
Well, also, I'm not Hayley Williams's or her team, but if I was them, I'd be going, right, how can I get the data on what fans are doing? What is the kind of the most popular order for these things? And then later in the year, maybe for Christmas, I released a physical version, the deluxe physical version of the album with the fan crowdsourced track listing, which may or may not be right, but you can, when you let fans do that, you can then do something with that for the official release, and again, it all works together. It's very clever, I think.
Story 3. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour is the top-grossing country tour of all time, thanks to more than $400 million worth of ticket sales, not to be sniffed at. Who was the previous holder? I got 2 questions. Who's the previous holder? And just out of interest, I mean, country music seems to have been making something of a comeback over the past decade. And so does it in general, does country music have quite a big live fan base anyway? And has that contributed to this?
Okay, yeah. Well, there's lots to say here. I mean, so in terms of who she beat, so Polestar reported this figure, and they said she beat Kenny Chesney, Luke Combs, and this is a very specific thing, pre-pop Taylor Swift.
Right.
So Taylor Swift, when she was a country, because now if you counted her last tour as country, it made more than $2 billion.
Yeah.
But I think it's not. It's a big pop tour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, country is fascinating. I mean, we did a big report on it a few years ago, and I really kind of spent weeks immersed in country stats and music. And I think in the US, historically, live and radio were country's bread and butter. Like radio was how people listened to it, and live was how you went and saw bands. And so it's always been huge live. But what's changing, I think, now is country tours can be global. And obviously, Beyonce's a bit of a weird case, isn't she? Because she's Beyonce. Like, she's not an American country artist who's not well known elsewhere, who's suddenly going to. She's Beyonce. You know, it's the biggest Beyonce tour ever. It's not just country in that sense. So, but yeah, I mean, I was reading a report this morning from Australia about the country scene there is worth $1 billion Australian dollars a year now, because there's a big audience, and so the big US acts come to Australia and play. So yeah, I think if you're now a country artist and you're planning a tour, you can go global, and you can then make more money. And so this one, I think, $400 million ticket sales. It was 32 concerts around the world, so it's like $12.5 million per show. I know people who went, and they came away very satisfied. Like she worked hard for that money, and she reunited Destiny's Child for the last gig, which has ways to drop the mic on your tour go. Like it's hard to think. I mean, obviously, only 3 people can reunite Destiny's Child for a last gig of their tour. It's not a scalable strategy for all artists, is it? But I mean, so yeah, so I think it's country music is having this moment, which is there are audiences worldwide who want to go and see concerts. But the other thing I was going down this stats rabbit hole. So the big thing about this for Beyonce is she's now had 2 tours that have grossed more than $400 million.
Right.
And that turns out that's quite a rarefied club of artists. So only 4 have ever done that, had more than 2 tours that had more than $400 million. And Taylor Swift isn't one of them. Like she's had one tour. She had one tour that did $2 million, and her next biggest was like 300 and something million. So it was just a bit less.
So it's hard to tell, because we got to think about it in the modern era.
Yeah,
which does that take U2 out of the equation? U2
it
in the
does.
list?
Yeah.
Right.
There's three artists have done it besides Beyonce, and they're all British. To give you a clue.
Rolling Stones.
Yep.
Rolling Stones is one.
Tick.
I mean, that was my best bet. After Rolling
Yeah.
Stones, I've got nothing.
Okay. Cole,
Rolling Stone? No, go on. You better tell us. Otherwise, we're
Cole,
going to be here for a very long time with
yeah.
people shouting at their whatever device you're listening to this on. Don't shout
Yeah.
at it just because it's probably very obvious, but it's early on Monday morning.
No, it's Coldplay and Ed Sheeran.
Oh, of course,
So,
Coldplay.
and
Yeah.
because the thing is, Coldplay have done quite a few tours in a relatively short period of years. Like every album has its own tour, And I was just saying, Ed Sheeran is probably the most profitable of the lot, though, isn't he? Because his costs touring. Obviously, there is the hiring the venues and the stage, but one person on stage, so he's probably the one who's taken the most. But yeah, so it's a big moment, I think, for Beyonce. And the other thing about this stat I like is it will get probably some of the right people very cross. Like people who are still cross about Beyonce not being a proper country artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of a riposte to them saying actually this was a country tour. It was heavily focused around the album, and it's done a load of ticket sales. So yeah.
Right, there's our big three stories. Any other business? Actually, if we're going to, we'll fit in a couple of bits of any other business. Can I mention, seeing as we're talking about live music, that's Own Our Venues campaign, which some of you will already be aware of. But if you've not come across it before, it's an offshoot from the Music Venue Trust, which campaigns on behalf of and supports grassroots venues in the UK. But in an attempt to future-proof the grassroots circuit, they launched this campaign a while back called Own Our Venues, where they crowdfunded a sum of money. Well, they're basically issuing shares, so you can buy a share in this venture where they get the money in, and then they use it to buy a series of venues around the country. So they've already, I think, bought 5 or 6 venues, which then go into the ownership of a charitable community benefit society. And I mean, you might be saying, well, how does this help? Why is this important? But the key thing to remember is, obviously, amongst all the many challenges that grassroots venues are facing at the moment, the majority of live venues are on a monthly basis paying rent to a landlord. So not only does a chunk of their money go out in rent every month, but also it's incredibly hard for them to plan for the future. If your lease is coming up and it might not be renewed, so it leads to a very uncertain future, or the owner just decides to sell the building you're in. So there's a lot of uncertainty when you're indebted to your landlord for being able to put gigs on in their building. Hence this attempt to protect the venue's existence by buying them up and putting them in the hands of people who run them. So after the initial campaign where they raised, I think, nearly £3 million, they launched a second round of funding back in May. And by the deadline last Friday, they'd raised another £1 million in an attempt to purchase a further 7 venues, including a Squires in Bedford, the Stoke Sugar Mill, and the Joiners in Southampton. And so they got to the end. Friday was the deadline, the initial deadline for this fundraising, but they've now extended it into October, saying the past few weeks have shown a remarkable surge in interest from both music fans and industry allies. In fact, in the last 48 hours alone, there was a wave of support with over 200 investments and major contributions, totaling just under £200,000. So we're extending the deadline into October. If you'd like to know more about this, about Own Our Venues, or as I say, how you can buy shares in this venture, you'll find all the info you need on their crowdfunder page. One more, you had a story from India, I think you wanted to mention.
I did, yeah. So this is our India correspondent Amit reporting this. There's a new Bollywood film called Sayara, which came out a few weeks ago, and the soundtrack is big, as they tend to be for Bollywood films. But this has become this big moment where the title track of this film has become the first Indian song to reach the top 10 of Spotify's global top songs chart. It's actually number 6 right now with 30 million streams a week. And they've got this thing called the global viral songs, which is the ones that are catching on and growing fastest. And it actually topped that. Again, the first Indian song to do that globally.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bit of context here in that I think Amit found this out, 90% of the streams have been coming from India. So of those streams that are putting it in the global charts, the master is still from India. But now, wherever you are in the world, if you go to this chart, and these are still some of the most popular bits of streaming services, the kind of global charts, you're now seeing this alongside the biggest pop tracks right now and the biggest K-pop tracks. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of excitement. Like I've been writing for a while about this. There's a lot of excitement in the industry about what could happen with India and can Indian artists break worldwide. And that hasn't been as much about Bollywood and the film industry there, because I think there's already a big audience of like the Indian diaspora who are interested in that music, and that it reaches them already. But people are excited as well about these new independent artists from India, so hip hop artists and folk singers. And so this is a film soundtrack, but it kind of shows just the scale of listening. As more people in India start streaming on services that are available around the world, suddenly these artists are being put in front of people who have never seen a Bollywood film, perhaps. So it's a really interesting moment from that point of view. And you know, it's I don't know, it's one of the things I like. Like I grew up on the UK charts, and so you know they were full of UK artists and the big American artists, but broadly English music, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. But now, if you're on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, you go to look at what's popular on the chart, you're going to see stuff from India, from Korea, from Latin America. Like it really is a fascinating time for that music not being restricted by anything to reach someone's ears in London or Paris or wherever they are. So so watch this. So yeah, Sayara is the film, and I think there'll be more where this comes from, just because of how many people are streaming in India.
Okay. And finally, this week, I'm slightly dreading this. I am going to thanks to Joe, our producer, and to you, Stuart, for handing me this line to read. Simply, why is Cardi B having a full-on cheese experience right now? Off you go.
Full-on cheese experience. I saw full-on cheese experience at the Southampton Joiners, etc. So there's this brand called Velveeta. I'd never heard of it. I think it's one of those things as drippy cheese to go on your nachos.
Right.
That's possibly not their slogan, but it's quite a good one. It's quite a good one. And they've launched their big new campaign that's called, there's so much fun in here. The campaign is called Respect the Gold Standard of Drip. And it's soundtracked by Cardi B with a new song that is called Drip. Which is, and I'm quoting from The Drum, which is a big marketing industry website, paired with a high gloss spot, an advertising spot that turns mac and cheese into high art. Cardi isn't just a voice here. According to Velveeta, she's the inspiration, with her confidence and cultural presence as a creative DNA. And a lot of this is kind of drippy cheese, kind of, but it just, and to come back to Oasis and Adidas, actually, you know, the first time anyone saw the Gallaghers together recently was in the Adidas ad, wasn't it? That was the first time they were seen together. Mm-hmm. Cardi B has new music coming soon, new album on the way, and she's got a brand partnership to kick it off. And that is the way of things at that level now. It's kind of funny that it's drippy cheese, but I was kind of, I don't know. I think we're going to see that like very few artists at that level will not have some kind of brand partnership, cheesy or otherwise, from now on.
And that's where we have to leave it for this week. Thank you very much for listening. I hope we haven't put you off your lunch. If you are enjoying what we're trying to do here, please do spread the word. Tell your friends. Post us a message. Leave a review online if you can, because it helps us to take on the pesky gods of algorithm. Alternatively, you can support us via Patreon. In fact, if you sign up to be a super fan, you get an extra 15 minutes or so of us pontificating over various music-related matters. So if you'd like to join us and support what we're doing, you can sign up to become a superfan of the show at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. That's patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. But you can also communicate with us via our socials or drop us a line, including, of course, any questions you have for us, which we could answer in the coming weeks. Anything you don't understand about how the industry works that you think we might be able to make sense of, drop us a line, thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.